She could see a ribbon of blue winding its way along the small river that ran from one end of the valley to the other. Johnny said, "You can't see any of the farms from here, or the trail that leads to town. This view is about the closest you can get to how things looked then." "You told me about how you met Ma, Christmas night when you and Aunt Jenny and I sat up talking. And I know you brought us here after Ma was killed." He nodded. She said, "You never talked much about the in-between things, though. Like Zach was with you and Uncle Joe when you first came here, right?" Johnny nodded again. "How did he tie into everything? And why wasn't Uncle Matt with you?" "Well, to tell the story proper, we have to go back to when I was still courting your mother. If you remember the story, your Uncle Matt was going to marry Verna." Her turn to nod. She said, "That horrible woman who almost got you and Dusty and Uncle Matt killed a couple of summers ago, when you rode out to California to visit Ma's grave. Your Uncle Joe and I always had a bad feeling about her. So did your mother. But we didn't know just how bad. It's a long story, though." She shrugged. "I have all day. Aunt Jenny and Jessica are going to town to make final arrangements at the church. They won't need me until tomorrow." Johnny glanced off at the sun. By where it was hanging in the sky, he estimated it was maybe 9 in the morning. "Well, all right. If you remember right, your uncles and I were working for the McCarty Ranch out in California. We were using assumed names, but then we found out our cousin Thad confessed to the murder of that constable in Missouri, and we were cleared." She nodded. "That's when you rode into town to see Ma." "That was the summer of '58. An awful lot seemed to happen in that summer." "When you rode into town, how did you know how to find her? I've always heard her parents didn't want you seeing her." He nodded. "That's right. But I had found out from some of the men at the ranch that she worked as a schoolmarm at a one-room school at the edge of town." Bree was giving a big, beaming smile of surprise. "Ma was a schoolmarm? How come I never heard this before?" He shrugged. "I suppose it just never came up in conversation. She wasn't a schoolmarm for very long, though, only a few months." "Was that because of you?" He nodded. "Because of me and her parents." "Did they really call my grandfather Doc Buzzard?" Johnny chuckled. "That they did." "We've never met them. Are they still alive?" "Far as I know. I didn't bother with a visit when I was out there last. They wouldn't want to see me, and I sure didn't want to see them." "So, when you rode into town to see Ma, you found her at the school?" Johnny nodded. "I left Quint in charge, and I saddled Bravo, and I rode on into town." 2. California, September 1858. Matt headed off to the corral. They had mustangs to break, and he and Corey were the two bronc busters. Joe said, "I'm going to go watch the action. You coming?" Johnny shook his head. "I'm heading to town. I'm giving myself the day off. Tell Quint he's in charge." Joe said, "You're going to town?" Johnny said, "There's a girl in town, the daughter of Doc Buzzard, and I'm riding in to see her." Joe smiled. "About time." Johnny slapped Joe on the shoulder and said, "I'm going to marry that girl." Joe watched his brother run to the stable, and he laughed. Johnny had been thinking he was going to saddle up Bravo and ride directly into town, but then he realized he was dressed for work and was a few days removed from his most recent bath. So he turned away from the stable and beelined it to the bunkhouse. Johnny felt like his steps were lighter than usual. He found himself smiling and almost laughing. He felt free. The reward for him and his brothers was a burden that he knew had been weighing him down. He hadn't realized how much. First order of business, a hot bath. There was a tub at the back of the bunkhouse, and he intended to use it. The stove was still hot from morning coffee.